Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live. Basically, a rerun of the trial, and then we're just going to kind of look into also a part of the Madeline McCann video that I uploaded yesterday because it was partially banned. So it was actually banned in a lot of places, and it didn't tell me exactly which regions, but just that you weren't going to be able to view it in a lot of places. So what I want to start off with first is just the Casey Anthony one, and we're going to kind of start on their recent upload that she did, obviously, that everybody kind of heard of. There's another YouTuber who kind of uploaded a video about it. So we're going to play that video first. And to my knowledge, he is very open. Hey, Tammy, how are you? And welcome. So we're going to kind of look at the recent video again that Casey Anthony uploaded just because again, she's talking real stupid in it. Again, like we talked about in the comments, being a legal advocate and all those kind of things. We all know that that's not the case with her, that, maybe it's something she wants to do, but nobody cares. And everybody knows that she's guilty of what happened with Kaylee. So I kind of wanted to play a video of another YouTuber talking about it recently. And then I'm good. I've had a long day, actually. I need to text you about it. So at the end so that we can get together and kind of reschedule because I know I was supposed to get with you this morning. So I do apologize for that. But yeah, we're going to kind of look into this video, though, of his name is just Penguins, I believe, on YouTube. So we're going to look into his commentary on the Casey Anthony video. And then I kind of wanted to play the judgment of Casey Anthony. And it's done by Court TV. So to my knowledge, again, you can use their content. So hopefully it just doesn't stop the video mid-play. Yeah, I just didn't realize, you know what, honestly, like I didn't realize like when I set up the day with you, like what day it was. I thought yesterday was Friday. I didn't realize today was Saturday. So yeah, I had my days all off, so that didn't really help me much. But let's kind of go ahead and hopefully this all plays well. My streaming isn't always working the best, but we're going to try this video first because I want to put out, obviously she's claiming to be an influencer now. She's going onto platforms looking for attention, looking for people to reach out to her, even saying they could email her personally and like kind of like dangling that in front of them, making them think if they reach out to her, then she's going to respond. But we all know it's not going to happen. It's not going to be from her. It's going to be from some other kind of team. So she's full of a bunch of crap there too. So let's kind of listen to this video and then let's see. Yeah, I was just a day ahead this week for some reason, and I have no clue why. I was completely off on my days, and then I realized what day it was, and I was like, well, I didn't realize today was Saturday. So I was like, well, that's not gonna work. So, but yeah. So let's go ahead and get into this video, and hopefully everything runs well.
still remember being a toddler, so easily startled. My parents playing peekaboo and I freak out. But then all of that changed when I watched the first Pokemon movie and Ash Ketchum turned to stone. I knew in that moment that I had to be better. I had to expect the unexpected. And since that day, I've never been surprised. Until today, that is. Casey Anthony announced that she's going to become an influencer. Yeah, the Casey Anthony. You know, the one that murdered her daughter? Yeah, she has come out of the shadows to become an influencer, and she made a big video about it. And I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I'm not here just to regurgitate what I feel most of you know about the Casey Anthony case. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I highly recommend watching some videos or researching it because it is one of the most deplorable miscarriages of justice since the OJ trial. It is still infuriating.
I sweat to death. Okay. Today is Saturday, March 1st, 2025. This is my first of probably many recordings.
Hopefully this is not the first of many videos, Casey. Hopefully this is the last one. Maybe the case just gets reopened spontaneously so justice can finally be served for when you killed your daughter.
And I hope as well. This gets reopened so she can get charged with killing her daughter, because we all know that she did it. And the fact that she has the nerve to come on here and act like she's just so overwhelmed before she starts the video, right, about like what she's getting ready to talk about, because we all know it's a bunch of bullshit. She's a bunch of bullshit, and it's interesting that she thinks she can just jump on the internet and all of a sudden everybody's supposed to care about her and her life. So let's kind of, yeah, not only her voice is deep, but it looks like she's about to be like, do what I say. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or I'm going to do this. You know what I mean? Like, she looks very strong-handed is all I'm going to say. But, yeah, let's see what else is going on here.
That'd be hopeful. Also, if you're going to film a video, can you at least take it off of like this slant? It looks like I'm falling down like a fucking water slide trying to watch this. Got the goddamn audience with the drunk goggles on here trying to see whatever you're yapping about. Like, why would you even film a video when it's like this, all cattywampus and shit?
On a series that I'm starting. I am a legal advocate. I am a researcher. I've been in the legal field since 2011.
Really? That's a big statement. In the legal field since 2011, eh? What happened in 2011, Casey? Oh my god. It's just kind of sickening because she's just gloating about it. This is like a victory lap about how she got away with murder, and now all of a sudden she's a crack shot legal advocate. I already said I wasn't just going to yap about her case directly, but I can't help it since she just kind of brought this up here.
And also, like, getting away with murdering your daughter is not like being a legal advocate. You know, like, it's just basically like, I got away with some shit with a bunch of idiots who got me off. So, like, do you want to, like, get with me and figure out how you can get off too? Like, that's all I pick up from that. She's just an idiot. And again, the people that she lived with around that time, I mean, who was it, Cheney Mason and stuff, calling a bunch of people idiots on TV after she got acquitted of the murder of Kaylee, even though everybody knows she did it.
She didn't do shit. Her lawyer worked her like a goddamn flesh puppet, like it was a ventriloquism act. Her lawyer is an evil mastermind who was able to convince a jury of lobotomites that they had been emotionally compromised by everything they had been hearing throughout the trial. Meanwhile, he was emotionally manipulating the jury to throw doubt in there so that way they would reach this impossible verdict. He pulled off the most outrageous Hail Mary. Casey didn't do shit. She also got very lucky that for some reason her searches weren't really used in court, such as things like foolproof suffocation methods. Casey Anthony is not some fucking Phoenix Wright level legal advocate. Her lawyer is the one that made the deal with the devil to get her acquitted on this.
And in this capacity, I feel that it's necessary, if I'm going to continue to operate appropriately as a legal advocate, that I start to advocate for myself.
Boo! Boo! Boo!
And also advocate for my daughter. For those of you who don't know, my name is Casey Anthony. My daughter is Kaylee.
And now she wants to advocate for Kaylee. So in a little bit, like right after this clip, we're going to look into the videos of what she was doing, why Kaylee was missing, and how she was not advocating for Kaylee. But now all of a sudden, that's what she's doing. So again, she's just a great person, isn't she?
Anthony, my parents are George and Cindy Anthony. This is not about them. This is not in response to anything that they have said or done. That's not to say that I'm not going to respond at some point to some of the things that they have said and done. The whole point of this is for me to begin to reintroduce myself.
Like introducing poop to a toilet. This is not the first time she's tried to reintroduce herself. She should be reintroducing herself to a prison cell for murdering her daughter. She did try and get her name back out there a few years ago with a Peacock docuseries called Casey Anthony, Where the Truth Lies, I think is what it was. And it was her telling her side of things. And to me, it feels like she uses her name and infamy as a money-making tool. So now she's once again using her name and infamy as a means of having a platform online to become an influencer to make money off of her name and infamy. And what's sad, it's working and will continue to work. She has a ton of people who unironically support her, even knowing she murdered her daughter and got away with it. They don't care. That's the current climate of things. It's become very clear that no matter who it is or what they've done, as long as their name made it to a news headline or got spread around in some way, shape, or form, that person will have supporters. Fucking.
And Tammy, I was just telling Chris that I know somebody who literally was supporting her after she got found not guilty. And I was super pissed. Like, my son was like probably a year younger than Kaylee. And I thought it was obviously the worst thing in the world, like listening to this trial and this poor baby. And my son's father was just like, oh, well, she was found not guilty. So, like, what the fuck kind of, and I'm like, dude, you're sick. Like, you're sick. Like, that's whole Chris. I was like, that's the moment I knew I couldn't stand him for the rest of my life.
Fucking O.J. Simpson, before he kicked the bucket, before he met his maker, had a brief bout as an influencer. Like, it doesn't matter that she killed her daughter in the eyes of these absolute fucking troglodytes that just for some reason want to champion anybody at all.
I'm doing this both personally for me, but in a professional capacity. Moving forward, the majority of what you will see will be me speaking in a professional capacity. My goal is to continue to help give a voice to people, to give people tools and resources that they can utilize so they actually know where they can turn to. So with that, please join me on Substack.
No, there.
And this is totally random, and I forgot he's actually the one that brings it up, but like you can hear her blinker like going on and off in the background, which is like, why is your blinker going on and off? Why, like you said, why is your camera all super stupid angled, and why do you look like you're about to smack me at the end of this message?
Thanks, Casey. I think I'll pass on that. I think I'd rather join the Cock and Ball Torture Enthusiast Club than listening to you pat yourself on the back about getting acquitted of murdering your daughter.
If you have questions, I will set up an email address where we can correspond directly. Up until this point, that has never happened. And it's only going to be on a limited basis regarding legal issues, legal matters.
Don't have any questions on legal matters, but since you're talking to us in a professional fashion, may I ask you a professional question? Where the fuck are you? What are you doing in that car right now? You can hear her turn signal is on. Or maybe she has a metronome in the car? Like, is she trying to hypnotize us through the video? Like, what is that? Why is your turn signal on? Are you filming this while driving? She's doing this at like a red light or something? Imagine being one of the poor souls behind her. She just sits in her car filming a fucking 5-minute video at the red light.
I feel that it's important that I use this platform that was thrust upon me and now look at as a blessing as opposed to the curse that it has been since 2008.
Wow. How brave. What a hero, Casey. Yeah, that platform that was thrust upon you. Time to turn it into a blessing. Right. That's very strong, very strong. I cut around some of her blabbering, but I really wanted to show you that part. She takes on this tone that she's some kind of victim, and now she's rising from the ashes like a phoenix from this circus she was put through to use her expertise as a legal advocate to give a voice to the voiceless. And now she's here to help all of us. Too fast, too furious. Casey Anthony is back. She was a victim. A curse thrust upon her, but she turned that curse to a purse where she's going to make a lot of money off being an influencer and a legal advocate for everybody's benefit. Yeah, Casey Anthony, wee. It goes on for like another minute. I'm not going to bother even going through the rest of it. The turn signal stays on for the remainder of the video, or whatever the fuck that noise is. But overall, Casey Anthony rebrand is pretty successful. More successful than IHOP to IHOB back in the day. That didn't go over nearly as well as the Casey Anthony rebrand. And it's really fucking sad. That really sucks. Imagine a world where you are arguing what Casey Anthony said, like as if it means anything, as if that has any real merit or value. Well, I was following Casey Anthony, and she gave me this unbelievably great advice. Oh, you were following Casey Anthony. Like, full stop. That's where I would write you off as an absolute unstable, unwell lunatic. That you would be taking advice from Casey Anthony. But that's the world we're in right now. There are people that are now following Casey Anthony as a champion. It's so disgusting. I just can't even picture what kind of rotten dweeb maniac would unironically turn to Casey Anthony, of all people, for advice on anything at all, unless it's how to get away with killing someone? It's just, we've got some wild shit going on here. It's what I think to be a pretty obvious, blatant attempt at just using her name as a means of making money off people who right now, if we live in a time where people will follow and support literally anybody and anything, no matter what. So she's trying to capitalize off of that. So I think it absolutely sucks. That's about it. See ya.
Gotta share it. So this is from the hell is it called? Well, it says up here, Ashley Banfield, I believe is how you pronounce it. Court TV. There you go. So we're gonna watch this kind of the whole like quick play down of like and rundown of what happened exactly. Obviously, which we all most know what happened with Kaylee and Casey and how that kind of went down. But again, I just kind of want to give a quick replay of it because I'm going to start the whole like series of it, kind of like I've been doing for Madeline McCann and some of the other children, which I'll be adding to Sebastian Rogers soon. And then Tammy, who's in chat from Barnes & Noble Crime Time, is also covering Summer Wells. So if you're into Summer Wells, please subscribe to her. Tammy, if you want to drop your name and things like that in the comment section, please do, so that, or your link in the comment section, so everybody can go subscribe to you for Summer Wells updates and info. So let's go ahead and get into this quick kind of rundown of what happened with Kaylee immediately. It's about 45 minutes, but we'll pause here and there, things like that, kind of comment. So I want to thank everyone who is joining us. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoy it so far. Please subscribe if you're looking forward to more videos in the future, and let's get into this one. So again, this is going to be a rundown of the whole timeline of Casey Anthony from Ashley Banfield.
911, what's your emergency? I found out my granddaughter has been sick and she has been missing for a month. Her mother finally admitted that she's been missing. So I need to find her. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car. Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name? Kaylee, Caylee, Anthony.
More than a decade after the O.J. Simpson murder trial captivated people around the world, another murder case made its way onto our TV screens, and another name became infamous. In 2008, a missing toddler from a quiet Orlando suburb became the focus of international news. Her mother's name was Casey Anthony, and her trial for the little girl's death would grip the nation.
The Anthony family was a really typical looking family. It was a cop, a nurse, their 2 children. And then the daughter had a baby. None of that is out of the ordinary. At the center of this case, we had a beautiful little girl, and she was missing, and it was a mystery, and we didn't know why, but what we did know was that mom was out partying while the baby was missing.
It's not a month that does not go by in my life that I don't have someone stop me on the street. And somewhere during that conversation, they asked, I wonder what really happened to Kelly.
Anytime a young mom is charged with killing her children, it makes the headlines because that is such an aberration, it's such a deviation from what young mothers are.
Casey, you don't realize the whole United States is looking for our Kaylee. Can you look up a little bit more? Raise your eyes up a little bit. There you go.
That's how you know this little bitch was a liar to begin with. Her own mom is like, can you raise your eyes up? Can you look at me? Can you sit up straight? You know what I mean? And for her own mother at this kind of time to be like, hey, can you quit being the lying little bitch that you are? Like, that shows you that there's something super, super deep wrong here. You know what I mean? Because that's what's going on. Like, her mother's basically calling her out for everything that she's doing wrong. And she already knows that she's not telling the truth. And that would have to be really hard from the mother's point of view, too, just to know that your daughter is looking you in the face and lying to you about where your granddaughter is.
Okay, so now look straight up so I can look into your eyes, darling. Thank you.
She did appear normal. I think she's about as abnormal as she can get, but I think people wanted her to show some emotion. She never did.
Come to order, all right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have been selected and sworn as the jury to try the case of the state of Florida versus Casey Marie Anthony. Does the state care to make an opening statement at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, we would.
You may proceed.
This is the case of the state of Florida versus Casey Marie Anthony. However, it is time to tell the story of a little girl named Kaylee.
George Anthony specifically recalls that at 12:50 p.m. on June 16th of 2008, George Anthony kissed his granddaughter goodbye and never saw her again. His daughter, Casey, left the residence on Hope Spring Drive with Kaylee Marie Anthony. She told her mother that she was going to spend the night with a babysitter by the name of Sam. You will learn there is no Sam. The body of Kaylee Marie Anthony had been wrapped in a Winnie the Pooh blanket and thrown into a littered swamp like she was just another piece of trash. Kaylee's death allowed Casey Anthony to live the good life, at least for those 31 days.
Everybody had convicted Casey Anthony in the court of public opinion long before she ever walked in that courtroom. And so Jose Baez and his group of attorneys had to undo that with these jurors who had all kind of heard about the case.
The media latched onto this case. My job was to save Casey Anthony from the death penalty. If the case went south and for whatever reason a jury came back that she was guilty of first-degree murder, my job was to try to save her life. I believe we could have mitigated the death penalty.
How in the world can a mother wait 30 days before ever reporting her child missing? It's insane. It's bizarre. Well, the answer is actually relatively simple. She never was missing.
And what I was telling someone earlier is that as far as they're in Florida, from what I know, and if I'm wrong about this particular comment, then, you know, I apologize, but I do believe that in Florida, like, it's the Sunshine State in the sense of, like, you have to kind of give the other party information, or you have to kind of let them know what's going on. So the thing about when Jose Baez kind of presented his argument, that was not what he presented to the prosecution in the beginning. And I get that you can kind of switch things around. You're kind of out there, you know, you're there to defend your client, but at the same time, like, I don't feel like you should be able just to make up things randomly as you go along with no proof whatsoever. And that's kind of what Jose Baez was doing in this whole trial. Like, from beginning to end, he was making up things left and right. Like, whenever the drowning theory didn't go fit into the whatever he was talking about at the moment, he would switch it to something else that was another theory that he threw at the wall. So I remember being very, very frustrated at that when I was watching it, because it was kind of like, can you not see that he has literally given y'all 4 different theories of how this child possibly died? And as long as you believe one of them fit into one of those, then it means you have to find her not guilty. I really find it sad that these 12 jurors didn't have enough brains in between all of them to realize that they let this shit go. Because there was tons of other things that they could have also, with the prosecution, could have charged her for. So they are at fault at that. The prosecution, I feel like, I don't remember there being child neglect, tampering with a body, tampering of a deceased body. I do know there's different things like that I do not remember her being charged with. So if I'm wrong about that, please put it in the comments, but I'm pretty sure there were tons of things that she did that she was not charged with, that if she wasn't charged with murder, they could have put it in the place and she still would have done a good 15, 20 to 30 years. So the prosecution dropped the ball, and the defense, I feel like, kind of did a lot of sneaky things, which they're known to do, because, I mean, how else would you win in a case like this? But at the same time, I feel like they could have been called out for it and it could have been stopped. Again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't know. That's how I feel.
Kaylee Anthony died on June 16, 2008, when she drowned in her family's swimming pool. As soon as Casey came around this corner and went back, she saw George Anthony holding Kaylee in his arms. She immediately grabbed Kaylee and began to cry. Her death was covered up. This family must keep its secrets quiet. And it all began when Casey was 8 years old and her father came into her room and began to touch her inappropriately. Casey has a brother. When he was a teenager, he attempted to also touch his sister. Casey was raised to lie. That will help you understand why no one knew that her child was dead.
We were finding out all this dysfunction in this family, all these lies, all these secrets, all this backbiting that was going on in this family before Kaylee even went missing. That Casey was willing to at least accuse her father and her brother of molesting her so that she could get out of jail for killing the baby. That's not a normal family. That's dysfunction.
Is your daughter there? Yes. Can I speak with her? Hello? Hello? Yes. Hi. Can you tell me a little bit what's going on? My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days. Who has her? Do you have a name? Her name is Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. Who is that? Babysitter? She's been my nanny for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years. Yeah, why are you calling now? Why didn't you call 31 days ago? I've been looking for her and have gone through other resources to try to find her.
When you first met Ms. Anthony, can you tell the jury how she appeared?
She always seemed like she was having a good time.
Did you ever see her distraught?
No, sir.
Depressed?
No, sir.
Scared?
No, sir. She was partying and having a good time.
Did she tell you that her daughter was missing?
No.
Did she ever tell you that her daughter had been kidnapped?
No.
That she was missing?
No.
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 No, sir. No, sir.
Did you ever ask the defendant where Kaylee was?
Yes, sir, I did.
What did she tell you?
No, she was at Disney World with the nanny. She said she was with the nanny.
She told me that she was spending the weekend at the beach with the nanny.
Did Casey Anthony ever tell you that her daughter was missing?
No, sir.
That she was looking for her?
No.
That she needed any help?
Nope. No, sir.
Did she ever cry?
No.
Did she ever act scared?
Nope.
During this night, did she ever tell you that her child was missing?
No, sir.
Once the jury was there, I think they hated Casey Anthony. Well, you could tell. They would glare at her. They didn't like her. They would shake their heads when they'd see pictures of her dancing on tables and everything. Nobody knows where she is, but all we know is that mom, Casey Anthony, was out partying when she should have been looking for her daughter.
How come everybody's saying that you're not upset, that you're not crying, that you show no caring of where Kaylee is at all? I'm not sitting here crying every 2 seconds because I have to stay composed to talk to detectives. You have to tell me if you know anything about Kaylee. Sweetheart, if anything happens with Kaylee Casey, I'll die. You understand? I'll die. If anything happens to that baby. Oh my.
And this is also the saddest thing. Her friend is crying more for her baby than she is. You know what I mean? She's like, if anything happened to this baby, I'm just going to be heartbroken. Right? Because we feel like that way about our own children.
Oh my God. Calling you guys? A waste. Huge waste.
Everything's coming out of your mouth is a lie. Everything. And what happened to Kaylee?
I don't know.
Sure you do.
I don't know.
More personal loan. As details of the Anthony case unfolded each day, public interest intensified, along with protests and anger towards Casey and even her family. On many days, tension outside the courthouse was matched by the friction inside the courtroom.
We're talking about cold, hard evidence. And he could get up here and lie all he wants and dance around the truth, but the truth is the truth. And depending on who's asking the questions, whether it's this laughing guy right here or whether it's myself.
Objection. Approach the bench. This case was the craziest case I've ever been involved in. It was like the Hatfields and the McCoys, and they were using profanity at each other just in the regular course of business.
How is the good faith basis relevance of that? That is not the question counsel asked, and he darn well knows it.
Anything else, folks?
The prosecution and the defense of the Casey Anthony case couldn't stand each other. Sometimes nobody could see it, but those of us in the gallery, watching them backbite each other, watching them snip at each other, watching them roll their eyes while somebody on their own team was up there, cross-examining a witness.
Approach the sidebar and cut the comments out. The level of tension in this one here was it was a 10. My major concern was one, courtroom control. What is that symbol that you are projecting with your fingers?
Using my middle finger, and I am sorry.
Okay, and what does that mean, sir?
The F word to someone.
At this time, I will adjudge you to be guilty. I will sentence you to 6 days in Orange County Jail, or he will be remanded. I made it loud and clear that I was not going to tolerate anyone breaking any rules, be it the prosecution, the defense, or the public.
I've never seen so many people so invested in the outcome of a criminal case. Everybody had adopted Kaylee Anthony as their own, and they wanted to avenge her death in some way.
You said that the person that you dropped Kaylee with doesn't even exist. Because, oh, look, they can't find her in the Florida database. She's not just from Florida. They need to look up her information in the New York database, in a North Carolina database, other places that she's lived outside of Florida.
On Monday, June 9th, 2008, between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m., I, Casey Anthony, took my daughter, Kaylee Marie Anthony, to her nanny's apartment. Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez has watched her for the past 1.5 to 2 years. However, after reaching the apartment, I realized that neither Zenaida, Kaylee, or either of her 2 roommates were home.
Did you determine whether or not an individual by the name of Zenaida Gonzalez had been the last occupant of that apartment?
I researched the prior occupants of that apartment, and it was not Zenaida Gonzalez who occupied it.
I think it's really simple. I think that she wanted a party. I think that she had looked at different ways to knock the child out, and maybe she'd done it before successfully. That Zanny the nanny reference, like Xanax for the baby. That's really the keeper of the child.
Everything that's coming out of your mouth is a lie. Everything. So I can look at you in one of a couple ways. I can look at you as a person who's scared, who's concerned, or we can look at you as cold, callous, and a monster who doesn't care
Who's just trying to get away with something that something bad that happened and trying to cover it up. Or we're not stupid, okay? And what you're doing right now is you're treating us like we're stupid.
It would have been very hard for Casey Anthony to take the stand because Casey Anthony had lied so many times. So what would she do under cross-examination? The defense team knew that Casey couldn't take the stand.
Casey? Mom. Hey, sweetie. Oh, I just saw your nice little cameo on TV. You don't know what my involvement is and stuff? You're not telling me where she's at because I don't know where she's at. Are you kidding me? I don't want to talk to you right now. Forget it.
The woman on the tape was someone who was completely in charge. She would be demanding. She would speak up. She would challenge them.
I want to talk to my mother, and it's a waste.
They had to do something to counter all the video that we were seeing in court of her yelling at her parents and swearing at her parents. At the beginning of the trial, she was a little bit more defiant. She was outraged that she was on trial for this. And at some point, we started seeing Casey Anthony wearing blouses that came up to her neck so that, with a big bow on it to look as innocent as possible. They even lowered her seat so she looked smaller than everybody else on the defense table because what they were trying to do was show this is a girl who could never kill anybody.
Now, what happened to Kaylee?
I don't know.
Sure you do.
I don't know.
Something, I'm guessing something bad happened to her some time ago and you haven't seen her.
She's someone else.
No, she's either in a dumpster right now, she's buried somewhere.
I'm a meter reader with Orange County, and I had the route today that included the Anthony's home. I noticed something that looked white, and there was a gray bag down in there.
As the search efforts for Kaylee Anthony stretched into 5 months, the news spread like wildfire that human remains had been discovered not far from the Anthony home.
I'm a meter reader with Orange County, and I had the route today that included the Anthony's home. And there's a lot of swamp back in there. Well, back behind one of the trees down there was a gray bag, and then a little bit further up than that, I saw something white. And it would be on the right-hand side that I saw what I saw.
There have been significant skeletal remains located late this afternoon. The skeletal remains are still the consistency of a small child.
The discovery comes a week after a child's skull was found in a nearby wooded area, blocks away from where the 2-year-old lived with her mother and grandparents.
We have secured the Anthony house. We've also exhumed the remains, and that has been transported to the medical examiner's office.
Did you receive results from the FBI as to the identification of the remains?
Yes.
And did that laboratory identify the remains as that is Kaylee Marie Anthony?
Yes, they did.
They found duct tape. They actually did a graphic of the 4 parts of the skull and put it back together for the jury so that they could see the duct tape around the child's face.
Do you have an opinion as to the manner of death in this case?
It is a red flag that when a child is not reported immediately to authorities, that's something we look for foul play. Besides the delay, besides the being found in a field decomposed, would be the duct tape somewhere located on the lower half of this face. There is no child that should have duct tape on its face when it dies.
This is why, if you haven't looked into the Madeline McCann case, I really suggest you look into it more, because even though she was not found yet, and she's not, some of the same circumstances, it's still some of the same layouts, the same of what they did, as far as how they handled the situation and some of the stories they gave. So I would highly suggest looking at that case if you haven't looked at it yet, just because, again, I was mentioning to some other people that I felt that a male disposed of Madeline, where in this case you can see her mother clearly did, because her mother included things that from the home, as far as her blankets, there was also a heart sticker on the duct tape that was on her mouth, where Madeline almost had nothing with her at all, where I do feel like a female would have included a lot of those items and a male would not have. So I do feel like that's how you can tell when a man disposes of the body versus the female disposes of the body. So that's just my particular opinion. But in the cases are similar in that way. They're kind of just acting at first as someone took them, and then, maybe things happen. You hear in a lot of the McCann's interviews, they keep saying, well, if you turned your back and you went downstairs or you went to the garage, things could happen. So that's why I feel like in that case, there was an accident. It wasn't planned. In this case, I do feel the same way. It was an accident, wasn't planned. But because the parents have this psychopathic tendency to them, or behavior, or even narcissistic tendency to them, they kind of get off on the media and they enjoy the media attention. So you really have to pay attention to that in this sense, because again, if just say something happened to your child and it was an accident, would you be going to the media and talking to them in this way as the McCanns do, or even as Casey or Kaylee or Casey did about Kaylee, excuse me? I don't think you would. So I don't know. That's just a little bit I noticed about those cases, and how they kind of mirrored each other in the sense of what happened to the child, possibly as far as accidental.
Based on the skeletal condition of the remains, can you render a medical conclusion on the cause of death?
What I put was homicide of undetermined means.
Well, someone just said that Kaylee was dead this morning, that she drowned in the pool. That's the newest story out there. Surprise, surprise.
There's the proof that she could easily get outside. There's the proof that she was big enough and strong enough to open the door. You can't get anything better than that. And look at how soft Cindy is holding her or touching her. She's on her own. And look at what Kaylee's doing. Kaylee's diving into that water.
When the defense gave their opening statement and said Kaylee Anthony was found face down in the pool, what the prosecution should have done at that point was to say, when you find your baby face down in the pool, you call the police, you call an ambulance, because you don't know if she's dead or not. And if you decide then to put duct tape around her and wrap her body in a trash bag and throw it in the woods, that is aggravated child abuse. That's a 15-year charge. They wanted a first-degree charge so much that they didn't bother to explain the child abuse.
George began to yell at her. Look what you've done. Your mother will never forgive you, and you will go to jail for child neglect for the rest of your freaking life. Why did George do this? Why didn't he call in?
You started off with pointing the finger at George, the father. You start questioning his credibility, his believability, so you would discount his particular testimony. And what they did was they created a ball of confusion.
Were you present in your home when Kaylee Anthony died?
No, and when I heard that today, it hurt really bad. Because if I would have known something would have happened to Kaylee, we wouldn't be here today.
Did you dispose of the body of your granddaughter?
No, I did not.
Mr. Baez, what would you see to determine whether someone drowned?
Well,
if a body's not found in a pool.
To answer the court's question, I believe, was what record evidence is there that the victim drowned? The answer is none.
And I had mentioned this earlier, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned this earlier, but I do not think you're allowed to just kind of randomly throw in accusations or things like that about different things that happened after the trial's already started. Again, I could be wrong about that, but I believe that you could, especially because they're in Florida. So I believe there's something called sunshine it's like the Sunshine State where you have to, as far as tell everybody like what your what you're going to accuse them of and what your evidence is, and you're supposed to share that with them. So the fact they get into this trial and they're so far into it, and then as soon as they start, this guy kind of throws out like 4 different theories. I feel like that should have been shut down right away by the prosecution. I don't know why it wasn't. I could be wrong about that, but I don't feel like you're allowed to just bring up 4 different theories and hope one sticks. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up.
Casey is staying with her boyfriend, Tony. And sadly, Kaylee is in all likelihood in the trunk.
It was an odor consistent to what I'd smelled in the past when it comes to decomposition. It's not a smell that you forget.
$39.95.
Forensic science took center stage at the Anthony trial. Over several weeks, 37 expert witnesses took the stand. But would any one of them sway the jury?
I am a forensic chemist examiner, canine handler, hair and fiber examiner, professor of anthropology,
geologist, forensic examiner, forensic toxicologist, computer examiner,
Human identification laboratory.
in the latent print operations unit.
My specialty is analytical chemistry.
insect evidence.
Did you find any hairs that showed evidence of apparent decomposition?
One of the items showed had a hair that exhibited characteristics of decomposition.
I think you had a death scene where Kaylee had probably perished. It was the trunk of that car. And that's why she'd been in the car. And that's why she lied so much. And that's why she waited so long. And the fact that she waited so long and saying anything meant that child was so decomposed they didn't know the cause of death.
Have you ever had the opportunity in your 30 years in the towing business to come across a vehicle in which there had been a dead body?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you able at that juncture to make any connection?
It was an odor consistent to what I'd smelled in the past when it comes to decomposition. It's not a smell that you forget.
Based on my 23 years experience, my opinion is that it was the smell of human decomposition.
That trunk smelled like a dead body.
The trunk of my daughter's car smelled like human decomposition.
He was a cop. He knows what a dead body smells like.
There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
Casey's mother was a nurse. She knows what a dead body smells like.
When someone dies, the gases that are produced from the bacterial metabolism have really no place to escape. And we began monitoring which chemicals are being produced.
There was one expert who supposedly had a detector, a sniff test detector. It was the most ridiculous thing I had ever seen.
Do you have an opinion as to whether there was a decomposing human body in the trunk of that car at some point?
I do have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
I can find no other plausible explanation other than that.
You know that your findings are not generally accepted in the scientific community, do you not? Objection.
Sustained.
Strike.
Granted.
He was arguing that he could somehow sniff the air in a person's car and determine that it was the result of a decomposing human body. They put this what I would call a junk scientist on the stand to testify.
And the significance of the evidence, such.
And I'm glad you're kind of bringing that up, Tammy, because that's kind of the point, right? So she is the mother to this child. So why is she able to basically walk away and not have to answer to anything about why Kaylee went missing, right? Because if you are the guardian or the parent to a child, you have to answer why they went missing. You are responsible for them 24/7, no matter, their age, if you are their guardian. So if something happens to this child, it's all on you. So why was she able to walk away with no child neglect, no, tampering of the body, no improper disposal of the body, no other things like that? Some of those things carry 15 years alone. 15 years alone. So these jurors just didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground, or nobody explained rules to them. And if that's the case, then things need to be seriously redone, and jurors should be really educated before they go into a case like this. Because for her to be able to walk away, I've seen people in a case with no body at all, and they did not walk away. And this was exactly around the same time. And I've been trying to look it up all day because I could not remember the name of it. But I do remember a case where a man murdered his ex-wife. He drove about 4 states across. He got a phone, 4 different phones, actually, so that he could keep disposing of them the whole time that he was going. He got 4 different phones, and he also did a bunch of things to kind of like hack the GPS and things like that as he was going. Later on, he was found that he was there. There was enough receipts. There was enough everything. But you see that with her. There's enough receipts. There's enough evidence. There's enough GPS. There's enough everything to make sure that you are making sure that she is responsible for this. So it's very odd how these 12 idiotic jurors just did not understand that you have enough evidence handed to you to see that she killed her own child is what happened here. And the fact that she gets on there now, she's a legal advocate, right?
Such as the smell of death, what that really meant, the fact that you had the decaying hair in the trunk of the car. I know the defense wanted to call some of it voodoo science. I call it cutting edge science that basically had support in the literature and scientific background.
What chemical compounds did that initial evaluation show?
The large peak was identified as chloroform because the chloroform was shockingly high, unusually high.
And the thought was that perhaps Casey had used chloroform just to put her to sleep and so she could go out. I heard, and don't know whether it's true or not, that was done from time to time, and maybe in earlier years when people didn't understand how dangerous it was, and that she accidentally killed her.
Any clues or anything that I should focus on at the house? Mom's house, your house?
Outside of maybe stuff on the computer, nothing I can think of.
On the computer.
They late in the trial got into some of the internet searches that were done, and then they tried to attribute them to Casey Anthony. She had researched chloroform.
Were you asked to perform a keyword search for chloroform?
Yes, I was. In this case, with the chloroform keyword search hit, we were able to recover a complete internet history from Mozilla Firefox.
All right, so if the user at the time typed in how to make chloroform?
Yes. The prosecution said that Casey Anthony used chloroform to kill her child. But I sat there in trial the entire time paying attention to every word. I still don't know, how do you make chloroform? I have no idea. What are the ingredients? Did Casey ever buy those ingredients? Do you have any proof that she did? We never saw that. So that's a big piece of the puzzle missing.
In our case, there has been no evidence presented that Casey Marie Anthony used duct tape for any purpose, that she used chloroform ever for any purpose, and that in any way, in any capacity whatsoever, she contributed to the cause of death of this child. It is forcing, guessing, and speculation.
Jurors don't know anything. You're painting a picture on a canvas. Everything that you want them to see, you got to paint it in that picture. The defense not only did that, but they did something that most people really didn't notice they were doing. They were throwing out reasonable doubt in every corner that they could.
You know, of course, that sex with a child under the age of 12 years old is life in prison, don't you, sir?
Relevance.
Sustained.
Only on Court TV.
At week number 4 in the Casey Anthony trial, tempers flared as the defense doubled down on the strategy they had floated in opening statements: destroy the credibility of George Anthony.
Ms. Burdick, you may proceed.
Casey's car was in Orlando. Yes, ma'am. Once the car is in the garage, do you access it in some fashion?
Yes, Casey's purse was on the front seat, and that Kaylee's baby doll, her favorite doll was in the car seat, like it was sitting where Kaylee would have sat.
I think Cindy Anthony was a compelling witness. There were times where she burst into tears on the stand. She was doubled over in agony as she's listening to the 911 calls. And I think that the jury, their heart went out to her.
When you look at the dynamics of the testimony of George and Cindy Anthony, you really look at the ebb and flow of that particular trial.
Can I have a break, sir?
A drink? Okay, let's take a 5-minute recess.
All right.
Here you have these loving grandparents who would move heaven and earth for their granddaughter. But also you have them in the unenviable role of being the parents of the person who's accused of murdering this child. You got Cindy faced with this proposition. Her testimony not only could lead to her daughter being found guilty of murder in the first degree, but it could also lead to the imposition of the ultimate sanction of death.
George Anthony. In January, late January of 2009, you attempted to commit suicide.
The defense didn't try to throw George Anthony under the bus.
Did you, sir?
Yes, sir, I did.
The defense threw him under the bus, backed up the bus, ran over him again, backed it up again, and ran over him again.
So you were drinking beer and blood pressure medication?
They crucified him in court.
You have to be specific with me, sir. Give me a date, and I'll answer.
I'm giving you a date, but
No, sir, you are badgering me. You're trying to get me upset, sir. I'm just asking you, treat me with a little bit of respect and you'll get respect back. That's all I'm asking.
Mr. Anthony, would you like to answer my question now?
Objection to counsel's commentary.
And I don't think that the jury necessarily believed what they were saying, but George started to show this defiant side of him.
Mr. Anthony, do you know a woman by the name of Crystal Holloway?
I know her by that name and also another name.
Okay. Did you have a romantic relationship with her?
No, sir. No. To me, that's very funny.
Very funny.
Yes, sir.
George Anthony is now a cop with a chip on his shoulder testifying, and he looked like, yeah, he probably could have done something wrong, which I think came directly from him being accused of something that he says he didn't do.
Defense calls Crystal Holloway. Did you develop a relationship with Mr. Anthony?
Yes, sir, I did.
Was this an intimate relationship?
Yes.
Did there ever come an occasion where you had a heart-to-heart conversation with George Anthony as to what happened to his granddaughter?
He was sitting on my couch and he had told me, he had said it was an accident that snowballed out of control.
Cross-examination?
How much money did you get from the National Enquirer for selling your story?
$4,000.
$4,000.
You may be seated. All right, gentlemen.
You know, of course, that sex with a child under the age of 12 years old is life in prison, don't you, sir?
Relevance.
Sustained.
You're aware of the possible penalties of child molesting, don't you, sir?
Objection. Relevance.
Sustained.
You, of course, would never admit to a molesting your child, would you, sir?
Objection. Argumentative.
There was an insinuation here, I think, that perhaps George had somehow been responsible in some way for the death of Kaylee, and that Casey's reluctance to turn on her father had something to do with the fact that he had been abusing her.
Sir, I would never do anything to harm my daughter in that way.
Only in that way.
Objection.
Sir,
Sustain.
You don't talk about a fact if you know that there is not a way to prove it. And generally, the only way to prove something is through testimony of an individual. I don't believe that Jose or Cheney intended on calling Casey as a witness. So it was unclear to me how they were going to prove up those accusations.
I do think that the defense did a really good job of confusing the issues. Maybe it was George Anthony. Maybe it was somebody else. We don't know. Maybe it was the meter reader.
Were you aware of there being a reward offered for finding Kaylee?
And by the time we were done with 7 weeks worth of trial, everybody looked guilty.
The prosecutors set for themselves a very tough bar in seeking death. Every piece of evidence is weighed under a microscope by the jurors. If there's any flaw or any missing link, no matter how apparently insignificant it may be, it's not insignificant to a death penalty jury.
I think that you'll see that despite the outcry, the notoriety, the emotions, so forth, the case is not here.
State recognized presence of the jury.
We do, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Have you reached a verdict?
And each count was being read. What went through my mind was, holy this is never going to go away. We are going to be talking about this in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
After 5 weeks of testimony in the Anthony trial, the 7 women and 5 men on the jury prepared for closing arguments. But millions of people around the world were preparing too. They remained fixated on the case and hopeful that justice for Kaylee was just around the corner.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the attorneys now will present their final arguments. The state may proceed.
Thank you, sir. When you have a child, that child becomes your life. This case is about the clash between that responsibility and the life that Casey Anthony wanted to have. She took her life and she put her in the trunk and forgot about her. And she disposed of her body in a swamp. It is a trip down the rabbit hole into a bizarre world where men who love their granddaughters find them drowned and do nothing. This is the world that the defense invites you to occupy. Casey Anthony is guilty of murder in the first degree.
I have to tell you that I probably think you have more questions than you have answers. It is extremely reasonable that she could have drowned in the pool. And that's where the state fails. They must rebut each and every reasonable hypothesis of innocence. They cannot rebut this. They're hoping they throw enough against the wall and see what sticks, right down to their cause of death. 1 week it was chloroform. Today it's duct tape. I'm not proud of the way Casey behaved. I don't think anybody here can justify her actions, but they do not constitute murder.
The defendant is not required to present evidence or prove anything. Never forget, no matter what the issue is, they have all of the burden and there is none over here.
Members of the jury, I would like to thank you for your attention during the trial. Please pay attention to the instructions I'm about to give you. The judge's job is to give the standard jury instruction. It's the prosecution or the defense to request a special instruction. One, would a special jury instruction indicating that proving how she died was not an element of the crime to be proven, I think that may have made a tremendous difference. I had already prepared that instruction, but when I got no request for that, I didn't figure it would come from the defense. I figured it would come from the state, but they never asked.
They needed an instruction on how they can convict on a lesser charge, because Casey was looking at murder one, but she was also looking at basically negligent treatment of a child. Super easy to prove, but they didn't give that.
Members of the jury, you may retire now to begin your deliberations.
Janie, do you think she's going to walk today? I'm just asking for a prediction, sir.
Keep moving, please. Keep moving. Keep moving.
Oh, into the show here, Janie.
Keep moving. Get away. Get away. Get away. Get away. Get away.
It has been brought to my attention that the jury has reached a verdict. State?
The state's ready to proceed, Your Honor.
Defense?
Defense is ready.
Let's return the jury.
It was totally quiet in the courtroom, and the jurors start coming in.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Have you reached a verdict?
Sir.
Would you hand the verdict form to the court deputy, please?
There was this tension in the room. It was so quiet in that courtroom that you could hear a pin drop, except we could hear the helicopters from the local news stations circling around overhead.
I actually read the jury verdict twice to make sure that my eyes were not playing tricks on me. Will the defendant rise along with counsel? Madam Clerk, you may publish the verdicts.
As to the charge of first-degree murder, verdict as to count 1, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
So when they said not guilty, I could hear 25 floors below the crowd outside. I could hear them gasp.
I mean, they just let a baby killer, an obvious baby killer out of jail. Murderer is walking out of this courthouse.
I ain't even gonna lie. I was one of the people, I was crying my eyes out. I was so upset with anybody who thought it was just justice doing it system. I was like, y'all are all fucking nuts. Like, I don't trust you. I don't want to sleep around you. You're all crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I'd never trust you in my life. But yeah, that's how I felt when this happened. Like, I just felt like it was completely shocking. I couldn't believe it. How could 12 people be that goddamn dumb? And it's really, really disheartening. So that was sad.
Justice for Kelly! Justice for Kelly! Justice for Kelly! Justice for Kelly!
As to the charge of aggravated child abuse, verdict as to count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. As to the charge of aggravated manslaughter of a child, verdict as to count 3, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
Then each count was being read, and she's being found not guilty and not guilty. What went through my mind was, holy, this is never going to go away. We are going to be talking about this in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
As to count 4, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of providing false information to a law enforcement officer as charged in the indictment.
I'm watching Casey. She's standing there. She's sort of breathing heavily. And as each verdict is being read, I can see her shoulders are getting a little less tense. I can see that Jose's shoulders are getting a little less tense. And I can see the prosecution getting more and more tense and more angry. And the cops who investigated the case were sitting 2 rows behind me. And one of them walked out and said to the other, that was some right there, because they were furious.
Appeal! 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 Appeal!
One of the jurors indicated that the reason she found the defendant not guilty was because the state could not prove how the child died.
I thought it was a travesty. I felt like the prosecution hadn't.
And here's the thing about that. You don't need to prove exactly how they fucking died. That's what I'm saying. These jurors were stupid. You didn't need to prove exactly how they died. All you need to prove is there is enough to blame these people for that, and that is their fault. That's all you need to do. And on top of it, this was a child. This was a little child. So whoever the child's guardian was or anything of that, it is automatically their fault. So no matter what happened to them, whoever was watching that child last, it is your fault. Just like Megan Boswell, just like Candace and Dawn Wells, just like all those people, it is automatically their fault. That is your child. It is your fault.
Adequately explained circumstantial evidence, because this was a circumstantial evidence case.
I wasn't surprised. I was surprised at the total acquittal. I think as prosecutors, we should have put everyone on alert. Be very careful before you recommend prosecution on a death penalty.
Had they charged Casey Anthony with manslaughter or second-degree murder, ultimately the case may have resolved in another manner.
I think she beat the system. Casey Anthony beat the system. She sat there trying to look like, a choir girl the whole time and wringing her hands and everything else. She lied to everybody. People hated her. People still hate her.
There's not but two people that know what happened. One is dead, that's Kelly, and the other person is Casey. Maybe one day. And for the sake of that child, she will answer that question, what really happened?
If I could ask Casey Anthony a question, I wouldn't ask her what happened to Kaylee. I'm not going to get the truth from her. I would ask her, how do you sleep? How do you sleep each night? What haunts you, Casey? What did you do?
The public outrage over Casey Anthony's verdict prompted the Florida legislature to pass Kaylee's Law in 2012. That makes it a felony for a parent or a legal guardian to fail to report a missing child. Several other states have passed versions of Kaylee's Law, inspired by that little toddler from Osceola County. I'm Ashley Banfield. Thanks for joining us.
All right, y'all. So we're going to end there because this ended up being a little bit longer of a live than I expected, being that I kind of paused it in between here and there. So I do want to thank y'all for clicking on this live and joining us. So also, if y'all have a chance, go ahead and go over to Barnes & Noble's Crime Time and go ahead and subscribe there. She has great information on the Summer Wells case. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that you will kind of be surprised that you didn't know about. So I want to thank y'all again for joining me for this live. I hope you have a great night, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.